I was offered Master and Commander by Tom Rothman. It was great because he didn't pitch it to me. You know, when I went for a meeting there, I said, what did you want to talk about, Tom? He said, I'm not going to pitch you a story, I'm going to give you a gift. And I thought, well, this is a good approach to a pitch session. Went out of the office, he came in, and to my genuine surprise, gave me a sword. And I took it, and I looked at him smiling, and I said, O'Brien. And he said, yes, I want you to take command. I said, wow, I give you points for a very clever pitch. Now, can I keep the sword if I don't do the film? I said, I can't do that film. I've already said no to that film. And he said, why? And I said, I don't think it'd make a great movie. I love the series, read them all. But if I was doing it, you know, I'd start somewhere in the middle with one of the long voyages, I think, and then get to know these men were friends, rather than the first book, which is all about their friendship. And he said, well, you know, maybe that's a good idea. Why don't you go away and think about it? And that's exactly what I did. I went to Europe and I walked the deck of the Victory. I went to a couple of boating festivals in Brest and Halifax. In Halifax, I went and saw a frigate. And I said, are there other frigates? No, this is the only one in the world that is a recreated vessel called the Rose, and it's for sale. I said, really? So when I ended up in LA, I said, I'd like to make book 10, The Far Side of the World, and I've seen a ship and I think we should buy it. And to my astonishment, they went with both the book, Far Side of the World, and put a holding deposit on the Rose, which of course became our surprise.
Peter had a very clear vision in his mind what he wanted, and then there's only a limited amount of ships that are available, and it was by far and away the best. We wanted to make sure it was something that looked like the Surprise of that period. So there was a lot of work to do to make that. For us, it was better to get the boat, make the changes that we wanted, and it was available to us, so we purchased it.
It's very important that when you do a picture that takes place out at sea, that you do have footage that is out at sea. That's really how you sell it, and it really ultimately will help the film in terms of the audience's experience. Nevertheless, you can't shoot out at sea all the time. When you're out at sea, you're not performing normally. You're out at sea, you're sailing, you're at work. We needed a portion of the movie to be out at sea. At the same time, we needed to be in a controlled environment. And at the end of the day, we determined that it would be in our best interest to have two ships, one ship that we could go out at sea and one ship that we could put in a controlled environment. So thus, we built one ship and we put it on a gimbal in a tank, and the other ship we had within 45 minutes of us, and we could go out at sea at any time. My construction department came down here in late January. It's a combination of Los Angeles motion picture construction workers and Mexico City construction workers.
The basic construction of the Surprise is true to form of the real Surprise. She was a ship that was built as a French frigate and was captured by the British. So her general construction, which is shown in all the sets, is French, but she had been owned by the British for several years, so a lot of her features have been changed to English. We asked the Admiralty Board to send us a copy of the plans, and fortunately they were there and we gained access to them. But it gave us the deck height, it gave us the number of chain pumps, where the Brody stove was, all these details that we would otherwise just be guessing at.
27 miles of rope altogether, just as the working rigging on the ship. All the rope was just bought in its raw form as rope, and then we set it up as rigging here on the site in Baja. And some of it was actually woven to be bigger stranded rope, so it would have a historic look. So it would have a left-hand lay to it, which most rope is sold in right-hand lay. It wasn't just the rope we worked on. We built our own hooks and blocks as well to give everything a very period look. Especially the ironwork is something that you just can't purchase and alter. It really has to be made from scratch. But the blocks, the pulleys that we made up was kind of a surprise to us. We were hoping to have purchased them, but on the day I was leaving to come here to Baja, the company that was going to do it backed out. So I landed on the ground with the bad news that we would have to do all our own work, and we got on to that.
It was a real challenge. It was a challenge that many people said probably could not be completed on time. We had brought down people that really knew how to get this specific job done, working with wood and steel, working with just the size and the volume. We brought down some specialists that only had worked on ships, specialists whose job was specifically to do all of the rigging and all of the sails, the sculpturing of the figureheads. Prop makers who built all the lanterns on the ship, all the hammocks on the ship, all of the railings, the stove, all of the hardware on it was all fabricated for this show. You know, again, this was all done in the period roughly between February 1st and May 15th.
To build both the ship, the Surprise that's in the tank, and to alter the Rose, which we purchased to make it look like the Surprise. So two gigantic jobs were going on, one for the seafaring vessel, one for the tank vessel. To have those ready in time for me to shoot in June was a remarkable job. O'Brien's greatness lies in, as I said, in his prose and in his characters, and in bringing to life a world on board a ship, and an era, really. And the first thing you do when you pick the book up as a filmmaker, all of the words fall out onto the table, and all you're left with is, you know, the cover, and the front cover and back cover, and the skeleton of the plot, and the ghostly shape of the characters. And you have to replace that prose with images. And it's the most extraordinary experience to attempt to do that. And I think that's been the great challenge with O'Brien, is to provide a kind of way of telling this story visually that would equal his prose, or at least do it justice.
He sinks the cue ball.
Sometimes it doesn't pay. I'm gonna try and
Is
get
he
it.
done for that? I think you're, yeah,
I got it, yay!
we want to get the cue ball.
You know, it's very hard to get into this genre as it is with, say, vampire films without making a comedy. There's a certain sort of tongue-in-cheek aspect to it all. And that's not true, say, of stories of exploration. They can have something far more interesting about them than the kind of swashbuckling stories. So if I had to be careful that O'Brien didn't tip into that kind of swashbuckling. So here we have Lucky Jack Aubrey, a very successful frigate captain. As O'Brien said, he's a creature who's half marine. And I don't mean marine in the sense of a soldier on the seas. I mean, he's meant to be at sea. He was born to it.
I read the script that Peter first sent over. Though it was solid in its structure, it didn't really excite me. However, the idea of working with Peter Weir was a completely different thing. So I initially didn't respond very well to the script, so I thought, well, without just actually giving the idea of working with Peter up, let me have a look at what the source material was. So I started to read Patrick O'Brien's books. And the second time I read the script, Peter had done a significant amount of work on it, and it was different. And although I did it at one stage, or maybe twice even, officially walk away, the thing that kept me up at night was the idea that he was a director who'd been one of my favourite directors all my life, responsible for things like The Last Wave, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Gallipoli, and I couldn't quite let that go.
Way down here for that construction to come up.
When you think about who could play it, there really aren't many people. And I think one of the things that made this project doable was the fact that Russell Crowe would play the part of Jack Aubrey. So once we had Jack, then we were looking for that counterpart. And Paul actually was just sort of the natural person to cast.
Stephen Maturin, what a fascinating character O'Brien created. I'm sure it's partly him. One's tempted to say when you read a bit about O'Brien. He is a medical man, unusual on board a ship, a very worldly man, a man of the Enlightenment, of the age of reason. He is, if you like, a modern man. But Maturin was holy ground in O'Brien, as is Jack. You have to get them right.
I thought this is an action movie, in which is this really detailed relationship between these two men and the kind of stress that's put on their relationship. I hadn't seen a script that had managed to kind of fuse those two things together. Usually if it's an action movie, it's an action movie, and you kind of go with "Ooh," and "Oh, that's terrible," it's "Woo," and people diving off and dying and whatever. You hardly, I'm not aware of any action movie that in the middle of it has two people playing the cello and the violin. I sort of found that really kind of intriguing. And the fact that Peter Weir was going to do it, that attracted me to it.
Starts again.
When it came up that some people were pushing Paul for this role, I knew Peter's first reaction would be no, because of the association with Beautiful Mind. So when Peter first brought Paul's name up, I said, oh, he's more of a musician than an actor, knowing full well that would just pique Peter's interest.
I nearly didn't cast him because they were together in Beautiful Mind. But I thought, should that be a reason I do it or don't do it? But Paul had a quality in the screen tests that we'd done and readings together that no other actor had for Maturin. I think probably my decision at the point of casting was somewhat of a gamble. I thought, I think he'll be okay. And I thought in the end I would go with it. And to my intense delight, I watched him take that character and make him his own, and at the same time have it deeply rooted in O'Brien's writing. And then to see him with Jack and see this wonderful balance. Russell's a strong character in life and on screen, and very, very powerful presence. And the wrong casting, the wrong type of person with him could be affected negatively by that. It wouldn't be a good balance. But, he and Paul beautifully weighted opposite each other.
A nautical phasmid, Doctor. At least for a hungry eye, if one has an appetite for whalers. I intend to take a greater interest in the bounty of nature from now on.
Oh, really?
Yes. I had no idea the study of nature could advance the art of naval warfare.
Oh, I see.
Now to draw in this predator and spring our trap.
Oh, Jack.
Yes.
You're the predator.
Yes, sorry about your...
It's all right.
I think you believe they're friends, and you believe they're very different. And as I think I mentioned earlier, almost from different centuries. It's as if Maturin, as Paul plays him, is the shape of the modern man, and as Russell plays Jack, he's from a bygone time where, men were men.
Obviously, the casting aspect of a director's job is incredibly important. And once we had Russell Crowe on board, and we were very close to having Paul Bettany signed on, Peter trotted off to London and spent 3 weeks over there, met an incredible array of wonderful young British actors, mainly stage actors. Some had done some film work, some had not. And really created not only a wonderful corps of actors, but an incredible crew of The Surprise. All of them willing to buy into the fact that let's go off to Mexico and follow this guy, Peter Weir, who we've been told is an actor's Pied Piper, and let's see what kind of brilliant picture we can help him make.
I had to let them know it was going to be very difficult. And I had to let them know I couldn't promise that their part would be any bigger than it was. In a conventional movie that was land-based, they would be there for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, do all their stuff and go. In this case, they might have 2 weeks' work or 4 weeks' work, but they're in the background of all sorts of other scenes. And many of them were very highly qualified, far more highly qualified than that kind of work. You're talking about people who were top of their tree in theatre in London. And you've got people who've done television miniseries, and others who've been in their own lead in their own movies. When I got down to this group that I wanted, I had actually in the majority of cases to say, you may turn me down. It's not great money. We've spent it all on the ship. It's going to be a long time in Mexico. It's going to be difficult. We're going to be rained on. We're going to be fired at. You're going to be, have to learn how to sail or whatever. I think you're right for the part, but if you in any way doubt that you can do this, please tell me now. One person did jump ship.
As you know, it's a scene all too familiar from the period. A flogging was part of what they call their discipline. It changed somewhat, of course, through the 19th century, but at the time it was completely accepted by the men, let me tell you that. They wanted more pay, better conditions. Quite rightly so, and they got a lot of those things through. Nelson supported them and so on. However, flogging wasn't brought up. Firstly, the strokes inflicted were not as bad as had been made in movies, other than men getting whipped by sadists or whipped around.
When the wall came down in '89, and suddenly we were getting television images from old Soviet bloc, I'll never forget looking at those faces, and I'm not talking about country people, but it was really people who were your equivalents. Urban people from, wherever, Krakow or Eastern Germany somewhere, whatever. But particularly in Romania, I remember, because it was somewhat later they got rid of Ceausescu, but here were faces that looked quite different. I thought, what is this? And I wish I'd collected some footage, but just shots of street crowds and talking to camera, often listening to an interview or something, or crowding around a demonstration or a memorial of candles being lit for the dead or missing. And I thought, they haven't eaten our food. They might be my age, but they've not eaten the food I've eaten. They've not been to the movies. They've not had the stimulation. They've not had the Kodak moments. They don't know. They don't have a persona to project to the camera. Hi, there's none of that, or sort of hi, or no image. hello. It's just nothing there, nothing, like natives from photographs from the, mid-19th century.
Okay, so that's the background. Now we're just going to go through the series of orders from the that happened, because this will be shot as a master wide shot.
So I just filed it away in the back of my mind. But when it came to this film, it said I'd like to crew this vessel with poles. Could you do it? Well, we couldn't afford it in the end, but we ended up with 12. And I thought that'll be the foreground of the background. Then Judy Boulay, such brilliant work she did, I didn't think she could get me the equivalent faces in America. But she went into bars, she went into backstreets, she went into out-of-the-way towns. She did casting on ships and boats and docks and hung out with people, who would not normally go to casting sessions. And she saw thousands. And she narrowed hers down and eventually made up 90 people who were as carefully hand-picked as you can imagine.
The amazing thing about working with Peter is when he talks about casting, it's not, I need so many guys who are 6'3" or have brown hair. It's never about the outside, it's always about the inside. So when he talked to me about the ship, he explained that I would need to give him the entire human community. I need the best and the worst of people. Marines, sailors, carpenters, musicians, thieves, the best and the worst, and we should love them for their faults. A huge challenge. He asked me to go all over the world to make sure we mixed up many looks, because in fact the real ship would have, back in the early 1800s, British, Irish, Malaysian, African, some Americans. It's amazing though how many people we cast who have no sailing experience, who we then put through training. We did 2 weeks of boot camp in the beginning before we even started, and it is stunning to me how the team came together and did what they did for Peter.
The idea was to live up to the O'Brien books. You had to have people that felt natural about being on the ship. So we tried to cast people that had some affinity for this sort of work. And then the training program, which we had, was really about a 2-week intensive school where everybody started to work on the ship. And basically it was just climbing, setting sails. We had sword work that we did, cannon work that we did.
Sweep down to 7. Now 2 is a little tricky. You go up and over and end up in a 2, and then punch straight across to a 1. So you're gonna parry over here, high, come here, cut here, smack me here, smack. Now I'll smack the other side, smack. Now smack down here, then smack over here. Okay, do that a few times.
Fire! Boom! Run it!
Easy does it.
Load the cartridge. Ram the cartridge. Load the ball. Load the wad.
Get it, Todd.
Ram the wad. Cartridge. Prime the load. Point. Make ready. Fire! Whoa!
We came out at the beginning of June, and we had 2 weeks to learn about the cannons, taking up different positions on the cannons, firing, and that's the difficult. That's a wonderful bit of teamwork. It truly is. And they were timing us, which to come in sort of under a certain time. I think in the ship when we work, it's got to be sort of like 1 minute and something to fire, load, and all of that.
Stand down, gentlemen. Excellent. Excellent. Whoa. Like it, like it. Knackers.
During training, Russell was very clear about his idea that we should be aware of the ranks before we actually started, which was great because once you get on board ship, you instantly know how you respond. We all had different coloured T-shirts while we were training that denoted what rank you were. Unfortunately, I'm just an average Joe, so I had a plain white one. But the officers had blue T-shirts, and they had stripes depending on their rank. The midshipmen had light blue T-shirts, and the Marines had red T-shirts. It's kind of like an experiment. If you put one guy in a white T-shirt and one guy in a blue T-shirt, you immediately separate them, which is how it is. They're separated by rank, and you start to feel a little bit more kind of respectful around the blue T-shirt guys.
I explained what the concept was to Peter, and he agreed. Every man that arrived received 3 shirts. a tank top, a t-shirt, and a long sleeve t-shirt. They also received a sewing kit and 3 name badges. And they had overnight to have their badges on their shirts. So immediately, that first night that they were here wasn't spent wasting that energy by, you know, perhaps going out to a bar or whatever. They had a task to do and they had to be in uniform the next day. They've got a bunch of training and stuff to do that they're going to get covered in shit. Why should they be doing that in their own clothes? So here's a uniform. And it made them feel like a group of sailors, a unit, immediately.
Hold, hold, hold. What opposes the clewlands that actually pulls the clews down?
Sheet line.
Sheets, exactly. So the command is sheet home. We're easing out the clewlands. We're hauling on the sheets. Once the sheets are all the way home, we say sheets are home, make off your sheets. The line we use to raise the yard up is called what?
The halyard.
Halyard. Halyard is always the line you use to raise a sail on a boat. So we're going to go to the halyard, and there's 2 of them. There's 1 on each side, and we're going to get ready to pull the yards apart.
You're helping them watch, and you can even, because they can't see it.
Right.
So sometimes you may want to help them, and like right now you could call out starboard. Starboard is home, or starboard is what?
Starboard, yeah. Starboard is home. Larboard is home. Stand by the halyards. Tend your braces.
That's what I should say?
Yeah.
More hands up. More hands?
More hands.
More hands to the larboard sheet.
Everyone keeps referring to this this boot camp, which kind of makes me feel like we were doing press-ups at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was absolutely nothing of the sort. It was kind of 2 weeks of a real short, sharp shock treatment. The research that we'd been given, that we'd done, is one thing, but to actually experience firing a cannon, to actually experience sailing one of these ships, well, there is no substitute for that. You can read all you like, but until you actually start doing it, some of the stuff doesn't make any sense. So our 2-week training was invaluable. I mean, I really don't know how we could have started shooting without it.
So I think it was more the training period, so-called, was really to do with weaponry, and it was a kind of classroom crash course in the period. We had to find out who could go up rigging, who couldn't, who was comfortable here, you know, in what function, and tailor their jobs for what they could do. I said to them all, I said, I just don't want you to ever, for the camera, we're in such a confined space, the camera may catch you in the background, looking like you don't know what to do, and it'll really let the shot down. So you've got to know your job. In a funny way, you're both seamen, sailors, officers, and actors. And so it will serve the film if you know pretty much what to do under any circumstance.
Just word for Tom, just going on board. Witnessing extreme things, this is kind of thing that I have encountered with self-inspection. It's background action. Action, please.
I wanted it to be as pure as possible. I didn't want any architecture. I didn't want any carriages rolling down streets and crinolines and barrels being loaded on board, you know, and all of that. I wanted to be at sea. and to open the picture at sea and to hardly touch land.
We have got guys that reset please. Slow with it because of the guys, have everybody on their guns, standing by. All right. Have everyone in their position, standing by. Stand by, guys. Each man's mind, different unpleasant thoughts running through it. If I get killed, my mate will get that half pint of grog that I had under the bed, for sure. On the other hand, if he's killed, I'll have his half pint, thoughts like that. So it's a tense period. Now what will happen in this shot is you'll hear the sound of incoming fire. Although I don't have that sound effect to play, I'll play my gunfire one. Just imagine it is shells screaming towards you or cannonballs. One veteran said they had the sound of like tearing canvas. I've heard it, heard them fired on the Endeavour. Most remarkable, strange sound. So that's what you're listening to and wondering whether your number's up, which of course is a naval term, meaning that you've each got a number down in the mess deck, the berth deck. When you're dead, your number's up. And so for some of you, it will be. So if you'll take your positions, the camera team and myself have never really seen the gun deck fully manned. So if you could do that and just stand patiently waiting, you can look out the gun port. That would be a natural thing to do, looking toward where the enemy is, and tensely waiting to pull that lanyard.
Peter's faithfulness to O'Brien has been very strong. However, he is telling his own story also. Every aspect of the film comes completely under his care and guidance.
So who does Harry have to look after?
When Peter first started talking to me about the movie and about the possibility of shooting the movie, I quite honestly didn't think we were ever going to do it. Well, I didn't know how we could do it. I guess what helps it make it work is there are a lot of different facets of the ship. There's above decks, which is outside in the open, which is the top of the set on the tank. We have below decks, which is the gun deck here, and then below that is a berth deck, and below that's the orlop deck. So the story is constantly moving from one deck to another. Had it all been on one deck, it would have been a big challenge, but I think the story's broken up enough to keep the audience guessing and interested in the daily life of the ship. Peter was very insistent that the sets were built with low ceilings as the real ships were and as the Surprise was, to add realism for the actors and to the story and to the visual side of it. We always knew it was going to be claustrophobic, but we still have to stoop on all these sets.
Guys, quiet! So what I want to see is the two hand spikesmen, numbers 1 and 2.
The low overhead is a part of the life on the ship. It's a commonly held misconception that people were shorter then. They generally weren't, although some people were short and some were tall, just like in our era. The height of the space that the men lived in here was dictated almost purely by the structural requirements of the timber the ship was built of. But more importantly, the requirement to carry the ship's main gun battery at a proper height above the water level to optimize seaworthiness and optimize the weight of guns she could carry.
Here we are aboard HMS Surprise's gun deck. In this crowded space, up to 130, maybe 140 men would be crouched, ready to go into action. Imagine cannonballs coming through the side of the hull at 800 or 900 feet per second through these dense masses of men with sprays of splinters. These fellows don't know it yet, but we are about to receive a broadside from the enemy, and we're just preparing for that now.
Okay, here we go. All right, stand by for rehearsals.
Including wild lines, please. Including wild lines. So cameras are rolling, the countdown has occurred. Bang! The men are down. Hold steady, boys! Don't worry, lads, we haven't started them out yet!
Mr. Pullings, sir. Jemmy, leave that go. Davies, Jemmy, take Mr. Pullings below. Mr. Blakely, pass the word for the captain. And get these bodies overboard.
Careful.
Mr. Holland, sir.
Once more. Leave the bloody goat. Here we go.
Guys going at 53.
Everybody clear on what they're doing? Yes? Yeah. Good. Let's go. Nick, come on, hit these like I do this.
Love smoke in the background.
Smoke okay?
Yeah, smoke's good.
Smoke's good. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Clearing, please, for picture.
Cortland in position,
And
thank
let's
you.
roll camera.
Rolling!
35 Charlie, take 2 for 5 cameras.
Hey! A&E coming, Mark. B marker. Speed on A&E. C marker. D marker. B on B and B. B on B.
And countdown, please.
3, 2, 1, go! Hold steady, boys! Don't worry, there's no serve about yet!
Pulling, sir! Jemmy, leave that bloody goat! Davies! Jemmy, get Mr. Pullings below! Mr. Blakely, pass the word for the captain! Aye, sir! Get these bodies overboard! Holland, sir! Stand fast, men, and hold your fire!
Yeah, see.
Lots of blood and lots of smoke. Standing by.
You asked him?
After this, I should switch him out to
Probably been through about 15, 20 gallons of blood so far. We're not done. I have worked with Peter Weir before, and I kind of thought, well, we're not going to really see all this stuff. We did the first battle, which was a kind of one ship getting cannon fire from the other, and we went to shoot one of the scenes in there, and I had purchased, I think, 4 gallons of blood just to have a big stock, because I think you could probably do a few films with a 1 gallon. But we went through 3 gallons on that first shot. And I turned around to the people I work with, and I said, order more blood. I found kind of a new side to Peter on this movie, where we've, kind of given him his own blood bottle, just in case he might want to splash something. Peter really required his entire cast here every day for everything. And basically, we had to almost every day make up our entire 25 principals and 100, 120 extras. We decided to put together a background team of just 2 makeup artists that would supervise the background people to do dirt and different kind of patinas that we did on their bodies. We found out that this cast didn't have bad teeth like they had in the 1805 era. And so we did have to do some teeth distressing, which is like putting tobacco stains on these 120 people's teeth.
Have approximately, in the number of costumes, probably about 2,000. Probably 50 of those would be, 50 or 60 would be officers, and then we probably have maybe 1,000 French and 1,000 British costumes. And of course, multiples for stunts, stand-ins, and things of that nature.
Royal Marines, fix your bayonets!
The costumes are mainly designed for accuracy.
Shoulder up!
When I started on the movie with Wendy, Peter gave us costume notes that O'Brien had made, and we incorporated a lot of those ideas, especially in Jack's costumes, as well as Stephen Matron's costumes.
We get into the fight, we'll change something.
The extraordinary thing about the costumes on this film is that simply to put them on is in some way to become the character, for the officers particularly. They're incredibly constricting. They make you stand up straight. They make you feel like a gentleman. And it's sort of half the battle won. Everybody really does look like they come from a different age. You just don't feel that you're part of the 21st century.
Obviously, we did have some people that got sick yesterday. If you have a tendency for seasickness, please ask for the medic for some help on that. And definitely drink as much water as possible. Don't get dehydrated. We had one of our trainers really got dehydrated.
We all love shooting at sea. If I was redoing it, I think I'd shift about a week's worth of work to sea. But we erred on that side. I mean, if you're making a film at sea, you have to read all the books. From the book of the making of Jaws to John Huston, doing Moby Dick. And you have to learn from them. And basically, the instinct of a filmmaker is to go to sea. And you have to resist it, if you can. Because, as those books tell you, and anyone who worked on them, it's very difficult that you have a shorter day, you have to get out there, get back, people are sick and so on. It's just an unstable platform and anything can happen and things get forgotten.
Quite possibly, in my life, I'll never get a chance to do anything so extraordinary as that ever again. So, if there is an opportunity to do it, I am totally there.
I'm your man.
Well, I'm not great on heights, but
nor was I. But I went up.
Tom Pullings is brilliant.
I went up yesterday, and
By the time we went to sea, they were thoroughly used to their clothes. They'd settled into them. They were used to where to go and what to do, what the jobs were on board. So when we really went to sea, it all came together. And the camera package is suddenly smaller. There are not any kind of, obviously, equipment surrounding the vessel. And it was liberating, and I think that's why I'd like to have done a bit more shooting at sea in that latter period.
Bristling. Let's hear it.
Hubble bubble. Bristle.
Bristle.
I loved being out on the roads. And those days was really special, and we were visited by whales and dolphins and sunfish. Some really magnificent days, just sort of, doing our work, but with an immense sense of freedom because we weren't connected to the land. I mean, we had one day which was a bit extreme, where we went a little too far west, and the voyage home at night time, boat transfers in the ocean and about a 6 or 7 foot swell wasn't very comfortable for anybody.
When I was talking to Pete, long before we started shooting, he was considering actually shooting the whole movie at sea. But as we thought it through, that proved to be probably impossible to do because we would have had support vessels, we could have had a lot of seas that we couldn't contend with. So we did obviously shoot some on the Rose at sea, which was quite enjoyable actually, because it gave us complete freedom. We could shoot virtually 360 degrees without worrying about backgrounds.
Well, we actually at one time considered trying to shoot the Galapagos sequence entirely in Mexico. And we did a couple of our scenes in Baja, California.
I must find that cormorant. And should it indeed prove flightless, you can join me at the Royal Society dinner as co-discoverer.
And there were parts of Baja that actually were fairly close in terms of the topography. It was a fairly close match to the Galapagos Islands. But in terms of wide vista shots, obviously it's what we found here has just been really, really breathtaking.
Well, they're surprisingly barren for sort of an aquatic place, you know, shrubs and dust. Obviously the wildlife is pretty spectacular because it's secluded, and it's volcanic. You get you get iguanas, seals, some parrots, and it's really good. Some of the animals have been quite hard to work with. Obviously they're animals, so they're going to try and run away.
You can go back. Max, you can go back. Keep in character. We're still rolling. Back you go. Stay in character.
Imagine if the seed had fallen here or here. It would have just blown away. But it didn't, it landed there. And so you have the beginning of life on this lava flow.
I've been so blown away and humbled by being here. It's extraordinary. You really can't escape its beauty, and it's, people will see scenes that we've shot in this movie and think that we've set them up with either, you know, a trained bird or animatronics or something, because it's incredible actually how close you can. I can actually hold a ruler up to an animal's wing and it won't fly off. Nowhere have I felt my ignorance more strongly than in the Galapagos Islands. I think Peter's sort of shocked at how much we were able to actually get.
Alongside. Take the party and cross the wreckage as best you can. I'll draw their fire forward. Ram our bows. Prepare to ram our bows!
Once we had the boats somewhat organized where we could start rehearsing, it was probably a 4-week process to get the battle sequence organized. Challenge that I was faced with was that we only had one ship. The other one was being constructed, and they were never together. And once they arrived bow to bow, we had very limited time to get everything organized for the crossing from ship to ship. So that was a huge challenge, just to make sure that we could accommodate the safety for 400 people. high-risk illusion is what I would call it. Everyone had a function. Everyone knew what they were going to do. So the chaos that you'll see in the movie was actually choreographed.
We shot our final battle sequence almost exclusively handheld, which meant the operators had the cameras on their shoulders rather than on set on tripods or dollies. That enabled us to move quickly, get a lot of shots quickly, get in and out of situations where guys would be sword fighting. We felt that was the only way we were going to get through the battle unscarred.
As in all Peter Weir movies, certain ideas do come up. Spontaneity is one of his greatest assets, and something might just kind of tweak him that looks interesting, and he'll say, well, what if we just made this slight little change here? We try it and rehearse it, slow motion first, just to make sure there was no safety concern by anybody involved, and then we usually follow that up by a half-speed rehearsal, and when everybody felt comfortable, we go ahead and put it on film.
One of the biggest fights we ended up putting on film with Russell was a 24-man attack when he goes down into the lower deck of the French ship.
After pre-choreographing as much as we could with Russell's double, Stuart Clark, we showed the fight to Russell. And he said, this part doesn't work for me. I'd like to be going over in this direction. I'd like to be fighting someone with this kind of weapon. So he had a lot of input into what he thought would work.
I think more than anything, that one huge fight on the underdeck, on the gun deck of the French ship, became a real team effort.
In choosing the music they actually play, we thought, okay, well, let's not restrict ourselves to 1805.
Speaking of mistakes, you must allow me to insist that's not an A.
They're probably a bit out of date because they're on the high seas for many years, or at least many months at a time. So, it probably takes a while for things to get through to them. So we thought, well, Boccherini's okay, and Mozart. So we tried many different things, and Peter took to an arrangement I made of the Mozart violin concerto. And so Mozart is the first, music that you hear. When Russell Crowe, this burly captain, picks up a violin, this very delicate sculpture, and starts playing it.
How about this? Are you in the mood for something more aggressive?
Russell, he worked extremely hard, especially at the beginning when he wasn't doing so much shooting. He practiced all the time. Well, to tell you the truth, I thought it would be difficult at the beginning because very few people successfully learned to play the violin as an adult, and of course we didn't have a lot of time, but it turned out Russell's got a lot of talent. It certainly convinced me you can do it if you try hard enough.
That's it, almost like an afterthought. That's it, that's it.
I want to make it like a pickup to the...
Try again from the beginning.
And also just a little more.
Just a little bit springier. Unfortunately for me, the violinist that I'm trying to copy, Richard Tognetti, who's an expert in the music of this period, he is a virtuoso. So the things that I'm trying to learn are even beyond, you know, some Philharmonic players.
Okay, so nothing. Everything needs to just fall a little later.
Took a lot of work, and I've still got one piece to go, which is Boccherini. So, while you're spending your weekend having fun, kids, I'll be inside trying to learn the violin.
As a violinist, I'm convinced. I mean, it's a bit like learning a Chinese dialect, you know, from scratch. And then, of course, it made it even more difficult because he had to play along with the pre-record. So he had to synchronize what he could play alone with my playing, which, of course, is difficult to do at the best of times. And both of them did a fantastic job.
The cello is a truly ghastly instrument. I sound like I'm trying to climb into a squirrel. It's been 3 months of kind of learning it by rote. I play guitar, but a cello doesn't have frets, so it's a much more precise instrument. But luckily what we do is we have the playback just really loud, and so neither Russell and I can hear what we're actually playing, because I don't read music. I don't know what it is I'm playing. You know, we've learnt to get our fingers in the right places.
Still 6.
Mark. One more thing with this. We need to do same players. 3, 4, 1. Very strong all the time. Contrabassoon also can be quite strong.
It's a very textural score. It's not so much a score where you're looking for a tune to go and hum as you leave the theatre. It has much more of a subtle impact than that. I think Peter has a very refined sense of filmmaking. His approach to music seems to be to allow the film to work on its own, and then when the film seems to require music, then he puts in music. So consequently there can be great long periods of time without any score. And then when it does come in, it only makes as much of a statement as is needed and not more.
And holding and holding and holding and holding. Strong, 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 and dropping. Yeah, now we've got him in.
All right.
Yeah.
You can do that.
You want to do it free? Do you need Richard to drop your click at that point?
Yeah, I'll do it free, but we should do the whole cue.
The score, I think, is going to be probably regarded as unexpected, and I think in a lot of ways it's really dictated by the fact that Peter Weir doesn't produce things in an expected way, and that's what sets his work apart. And for the same reason, he wanted the score to not be what everybody would expect of this kind of epic movie.
I'd like to do another take of this opening.
There was a piece that we collectively wrote, a fairly big piece which was commissioned for the Millennium celebrations in Sydney, based on a song of mine, and it's called The Ghost of Time. And this particular piece came to the attention of Peter Weir. And from what I understand, when he was actually shooting the film, he was playing it back on the set. It's not only the piece is factored into the film too, but it's also the kind of the combination of people involved. We're a very strange collective.
They say this music stinks.
Oh, okay.
Of course I'm joking.
I think it was really the way that collective worked that he wanted to replicate in a way. We come from very different backgrounds, but we also share a lot of commonality as well.
So we do it without the clarinet?
Without the clarinet.
Let's do it without now. We have some time still. I'd like to do a pickup with it, just in case we want it for...
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. But we also need to get so much more weight out of these low strings.
Yeah. Clarinet's 1-2, bass clarinet 1-2. For the moment, don't play 24 to the end. We might do a take later with it, but for the moment, don't play.
The three of us together had this synchronicity. Christopher is used to composing his own music and conducting it, and Ivor is used to working in the booth, and I'm used to leading an orchestra from the first violin. So we were able to work together like this, and at the beginning I didn't think it was going to be possible for all sorts of reasons. And then when I found out it was possible to actually sit in the concertmaster's chair, I thought, great, this is fantastic, because then, so I had an input into, you know, the interpretation of the music, and I was able to, I suppose, be part of the orchestra and part of that fabric, which is so important in creating music.
Okay, 1B1, take 5.
It's ended up being an extraordinarily diverse combination of things. In its largest moments, there are 102 musicians playing in an orchestra, playing, you know, as full as an orchestra can. And apart from that, the score is also dominated by drums.
That's either on or off, right?
The drums are always signalling the way that the ship is always moving forward on a mission. We had to be careful. They're not standard drums. They're not battle drums. They're not warlike drums. They're not cliche drums, but they do mean business. And every time you hear these drums, you know we're back to business again.
I thought if I get the details right, I think that it will make a difference to the viewing of the film. The feeling that this is as close as you can to the impossible but exciting idea of travelling back to the past. I want you to sort of, I think, in viewing the film, have had a glimpse through a chink, through a crack, back 200 years to life on board a ship like that. Just a glimpse, and then the door closes.